We're here, and we have a question about the recent Financial Times publications that reported that the U.S. were supposedly amazed by the intransigence of Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov during a meeting with Secretary of State Marco Rubio on the sidelines in September. And according to the sources, Lavrov's uncompromising stance regarding the conflict in Ukraine led to doubts on the American side about the negotiations of Moscow and Ukraine on the settlement. How could you comment on this report? It's like you knew what to ask. This is an incredible story, and I believe, and it's worthy of Agatha Christie works. If this article appeared back in the days of Agatha Christie, I believe it could be a pretext for another detective story titled A True American Article. Now let's take a look. Financial Times is a British source. Of course, there's an international component and a wide network of special correspondents, and there's different financing, but the main headquarters, and how to put it best, I don't want to say the main roots, but the main intellectual power is London. So an article comes out dedicated to the U.S.-Russia negotiations. The article makes references, this British news article makes references to the supposed sources aware of the state of negotiations between Russia and the U.S. So who could truly be aware, first and foremost, with the state of negotiations? Either representatives of the Russian Federation, but the article is clearly anti-Russian, or the representatives of the United States. Could the sources of the current American elite have anti-Russian nature? Of course, they have different sources. Could those be sources truly aware of the situation? Sure. But there is a certain point that does not make sense. Either those American sources truly aware of the situation around the negotiations would not leak this into a British source. They would give it to their own journalists. Secondly, why would a British newspaper publish material that not just takes pleasure in the theme of Russia-US issues, as they've put it nicely, but they make an announcement out of it without mentioning any names? Perhaps we weren't expecting names, but not even their position or the area where the source is coming from. Why such article came out? That's because it's the UK, and I don't mean the British people, but the conglomerate of political elites of special services. It's them who are the main basing point of escalating the situation around Ukraine. There's a lot of proof of that. First and foremost, I've already pointed it out. This destructive, provocational action implemented by the UK way before 2022 around the situation in Ukraine, around Ukraine, and of course against the European Union, that was aimed at weakening the European Union. But we also recall 2022, who was behind the undermining of the negotiation process that began back then. Of course, it was the UK, and it wasn't just one newspaper or a couple sources, but directly Boris Johnson, if I'm not mistaken, who was the Prime Minister back in the day. Was he the Prime Minister? Who personally came to Ukraine and dissuaded the Kyiv regime from continuing negotiations with Russia. Why? Because the negotiations and diplomatic settlement and any kind of peace in Ukraine were not needed. They were not convenient for the UK, and it was the same nature and the same spirit that were present when publishing this article. And of course, it wasn't just published in order to gain likes or gain views on the website of Financial Times, but it was also necessary in order to, after that, stir up the situation for it to be a source. Because you see, Financial Times is supposedly a respectable source with their history, with their investigations and so on, so that there was something to reference. You know, reporting some sources, the information would never stay afloat, but when they're legalized, but when they've passed through a publication like that, and just take a look at how it's sing-sung right now. So we shouldn't comment on what is written in the article, but we should comment on the fact that it's yet another element of information war that is part of a hybrid war waged by the collective West and its Anglo-Saxon bloc, where Ukraine used as an instrument and peace, stability, and security on the European continent are the anti-goal for them.